All right, good afternoon. I'm here on Wednesday, October 9th. My name is Tom Yamarone, and I'm here with Russ. Russ from Santa Clara.
Russ Cunningham from Santa Clara.
Okay, and Russ is going to recount for us the night of September 19th, 2013. And Russ, why don't you just tell us what happened that night?
Well, we were up in the Cottonwood Lakes Basin at a lake called South Fork Lake, and the reason we took this trip was to hopefully help me catch a golden trout, which I had never caught. And I'm an avid fisherman. I love to fish, and one of the reasons that we went up there was specifically to catch my first golden trout. So we got up to the lake. We had set up camp. There was 3 tents, 4 of us, myself and Don and Chikawa were in one tent. His brother Jerry was in another one, and a fellow named Bob was in one of the other ones. We were within, I would say, 15 yards of each other, and overlooking the lake, probably 250 to 300 feet from the water's edge, and up on a little knoll to walk down. There was a little knoll next to us off to the right, to the south, and went up on this little ridge, maybe 30, 40 feet high. And unfortunately I had some issues early on a couple of years ago and started having prostrate difficulties and developed into surgery, etc. So I have to get up at night a little bit more than normal. So the night we were there, the first night, it was about 11:30, and I got up to go to the bathroom, and got out of the tent. Full moon, it's just beautiful out. It was a harvest moon, and you could see the lake, all the mountains. It was, when you looked out to the west, and I looked at the moon, it was probably sitting at about, maybe on a clock, I would say maybe at about 10:30. Maybe 10:30 elevation as you look at it. And I walked maybe 15 yards away from the tent over to this big bristlecone pine tree, and stood there and began to urinate. And out of the corner of my eye to the right, I'm facing the lake, and out of the corner of my eye to the light, I saw a shadow, and I looked up, and I saw this figure walking down off the ridgeline, and wasn't sure what it was. Kind of turned away and looked back, thinking that I possibly had saw something that I didn't see, and at that point I realized that it was a real figure, and it was a big figure, and the way it was walking, I looked at it, and I could see it outlined against the moon, and that, and at first indication I had that was very tall, probably at least 7 foot or better, and probably at the same instance I realized that what I was seeing was a Sasquatch, and I was like, it's hard to describe it, but my body just, I'm feeling it right now every time I discuss it, and I don't talk about it that much, except with a couple of friends and my family, but my whole body it just feels different than anything I've ever experienced, and a good feeling, not a bad feeling, not a feeling that I was frightened or shocked or anything. I'd say shocked. Yeah, I was a little shocked, but I looked at it, and it was just amazing. I watched this animal walking in such a way that it just glided over these rocks. And this terrain that we were on was all rocks, very little dirt. In fact, where we put the tent pegs in, we had to pick spots out that was like a little softer where we get the tent pegs in for the tent, because when the wind came up, it would probably blow the tent away. But other than that, it was all rocky, bowling ball like rocks, which were I could never walk on them, even in the moonlight, without kind of staggering around and everything. And this animal just kind of glided over it, and I visualized that with what I was seeing was a very big, muscular NBA black basketball player, and no racial overtone involved in that and everything, but it was
that was the body shape.
That was the body shape. And I noticed that the head was from the front of the head where the eyes are went back a little bit. I didn't see an abnormal amount of hair on the animal, which, you know, in the past you always think of Sasquatch, it's like, you know, Chewbacca on Star Wars. Well, no, it wasn't like that. His head didn't have a big bunch of hair. It was nice. It was a very attractive looking figure. And
what was the lighting like? I don't mean to interrupt, but what was the lighting from that position of the moon at 10:30 in the sky? Like a spotlight down on it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say, but everything was lit up. I mean, you could walk, if you paid attention to where you were walking, I would have no trouble walking. It was that light out.
Right.
And I could see the figure. I could see him outlined. And after I reported it first to the ranger station in Lone Pine, and then they referred me to another person who called me a couple days later, a girl named Joy from the Bureau of Land Management, who was very nice. She asked me something that I hadn't thought of, which was, how did you determine the height of the animal? Well, I had forgotten, but my friend Donnie, I asked him about that. My friend Donnie, who was with me, he said, do you remember that big boulder that was behind the tent? And he said that boulder was probably 5 foot, I believe is what he said in height. And when I first saw the animal coming down off the ridge line, it walked behind the boulder, went past, and the boulder was probably...
I'm going to start it again. I couldn't see the indicator that it was... We are recording. Okay, we were recording. Okay. Great. So the boulder,
yeah,
you and Donnie thought it was
about here, so up above that. So I'm figuring at least 7, probably closer to 8 feet in that.
And how long did you observe it walking?
I'm going to guess, you know, it was really fast, and the animal wasn't moving slow. It wasn't running or anything like that. It was just walking at a steady gait, like a glide. And I'm going to guess not more than 30 seconds, maybe 40 seconds. I watched him all the way come down, and he walked between my tent where I was with Donnie and Bob's tent, which he walked right in between there. And at first I thought possibly it was going to be something that might bother Bob, and I was a little worried about that at first. But then he just walked right by. His head didn't move. He didn't know I was there. I think because the wind direction was off. Otherwise, he probably would have smelled me. That's what we talked about the next morning. But he didn't move. I didn't move, and watched him walk all the way down. He went over another crest, and then walked down to a level spot that took him right down to the lake. And that's when I lost sight of him, because he was over the crest and I didn't see him. And I was a little concerned, not that I was afraid he was going to attack or anything, but I didn't know, you know, the situation. So when I got back to the tent, I didn't wake Donnie up, because I honestly felt that if I would have said that, he would have said, you know, you full of crap, go back to bed or something at that point. But my body was in such a state of shock that I got into the tent, unzippered the part, and stood there, or knelt there for at least 20 minutes or more, watching the area just to see if he might come back.
Right.
And I didn't know what I was going to do, because the thing was pretty big. You know, I don't know. We didn't have any weapon or anything like that. Not that I would have used one, but I just was afraid that it might come back and bother Bob or come back at us, and then nothing happened.
Well, I'll tell you from the people I've interviewed, eyewitnesses who've seen these creatures, your reaction's one of the more calmer ones. That you do mention you weren't frightened, but you were shocked.
Yeah.
You were amazed, but not to the point of panic. You know, there was no fear or panic.
I kind of immediately after I saw it, and I was standing there, and I still had my fly open, and
Right.
I hadn't even gone. I was kind of like stunned, and but I felt right after that I was really gifted, that for some reason, you know, God allowed me to witness this creature who people talk about, people have saw it, and you see things on TV and everything, and to my knowledge at that point, until I met you and talked to you, nobody's ever had any real proof. And I said, let me tell you, there's a real Sasquatch. I had no doubt in my mind what it was.
Cool.
And you know, I told Tom the history I've had. My background has been identifying things, and identifying people, identifying cars and objects for years. Long ago, when I was in law enforcement, and it just stays with you. You get training like that, and you can tell. And most people might think, oh, you saw a bear. Well, you know, I've had encounters with bears. Like I told Tom, I had a couple of close encounters, unbelievable stories with grizzly bears, and I know a bear doesn't walk like that on its feet. They just in the head.
Not for that distance.
Not that distance.
No.
And this animal just it didn't move. It went over these rocks like
Yeah.
you could have carried. He could have balanced like a bowl of water on his head, and it probably wouldn't have spilled much more than a couple of drops. He was that smooth, and he's just
How close was he to you?
30 yards.
30 yards.
Yeah.
And I wanted you, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to pull the camera back. If you could show us what you observed in his locomotion and how he was striding.
Yeah.
Let me do that, because I'd like to see you show us if the arms were swinging or what you observed in motion-wise. Okay.
Yeah, I would just say that he was standing like kind of semi-upright, like in the top part of his body, but the bottom part where his arms were, it was like kind of like that.
Okay. Thank you. And the length of the arm?
They were down. I'm going to say pretty close to his knees.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, he wasn't like all bent over like an ape walking like that.
Mm-hmm.
He was walking like that. I told Tom, he was walking like a couple of the guys that play golf with, the black gentlemen, and they do like a chicken walk, and it was kind of like that, but it wasn't bouncy. It was all smooth.
Yeah.
The stride. It was amazing. It was just.
Right, and I will say for the record, I mentioned to Russ that indeed there have been other eyewitness accounts, and they've noted the smooth gait of these creatures, the smooth cadence, that there's not a bounce to their head. So that's something that's been observed in other eyewitness accounts.
Yeah.
And that's what we look for, Russ, with anecdotal reports, because like you said, the evidence, we consider the footprint evidence valid, but not proof enough. It would be proof enough in a courtroom, but not to prove a species. The Patterson-Gimlin film, a good piece of video, photographic evidence, but again...
Yeah, one of the things too, I mean, like some people that see things like you told me, and the one report was that former Marine up in Markleyville that saw it, and the deputy sheriff and stuff. I know it's not an admissible type of evidence in court, but has anybody ever had a lie detector test done?
Yes. Yes. In fact, the man I mentioned who works with the Napa Sheriff's Department,
okay.
That's what he does. I believe he conducts lie detector tests. Some people have. I'll tell you though, I think what the man from Santa Rosa did, who had the sighting near Markleyville, he felt more compelled just to be sure of what he saw. He went and sought a hypnotist, a therapist, more or less, a psychiatrist who does
Hypnosis, yeah. I'm reading a book about that right now.
And it was in his hopes to be able to recount more of the detail of what he saw, because his sighting was 1,000, 2,000 as they locked eyes, and then it bolted. So,
yeah,
but
this one did lock eyes.
He was able to see, the shape and the length of the hand. He was able to even see that our palms are square, and this was more rectangular.
Okay.
The palm.
I didn't.
So
I couldn't identify
there were
that.
physical things he saw like that. Yeah, and it seems in your case you were able to observe the gait.
Yeah, I went over
the length of the arms,
everything
the height.
really clear. Like, I don't know how many times, probably 100 times since the encounter, to try to recount something that I missed when I first saw it. But I think I was just so amazed at what was going on that I really didn't.
Well, I have a couple of questions. I'm sure it must have been, to put it all, to recount, to realize what's happening at that moment. What time did you guys go to bed that night? What time did you hit the tent?
It was probably 8:30 or 9. We were real tired
Yeah,
because we had walked up that day, and it was I hadn't backpacked or had a pack on my back that weighed 40 pounds for probably 8 or 9 years.
Right.
And it was a tough hike at the end, but we fished all the way till like almost dark.
Yeah.
And then we had a dinner at Top Ramen, and sat around. We couldn't build a fire or anything because there's no fires up there or anything like that, but sat around. We were pretty exhausted, and we had planned on getting up early and doing some more fishing and fish the creeks coming out. So.
And I had another question. Let me get to it here. A friend of mine, we were talking last night. Is there something you wish you had done differently, or is there, as you think about the encounter you had, is there something have you thought of what you might have? Have you thought about what you did and wish you had done something differently?
Well, I it's kind of funny, but like I told you, and it's just a true feeling that I have. Not that I'm an expert or anything like that, and Sasquatches or aliens, but I didn't feel comfortable making an attempt to make contact or say anything, because I didn't know. I didn't think it would attack me, but I thought I would frighten the animal, and I didn't want to do that because he has the right to be there just like us, but it would have been really something special to have made eye contact with him or seen him in the daytime and tried to communicate. Like if it was an alien, and I thought, probably this is because of that movie Close Encounters, but I think if I would have saw an alien, it looked like an alien walking around, I would have probably walked right out and tried to make contact with it, because either way you're screwed. Things knows you're there, so you might as well try to be friends with it.